Hello for the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time using the Gospel, Luke 12:13 to 21. And the first reading, Ecclesiastes 1, verses 2, and then chapter 2, 21 to 23. And it deals with Jesus was a genius once again. I titled it, This Night Your Life Will Be Demanded of You. You know, Jesus was a genius. He would always answer questions, or people would ask him questions, and he would give an answer and then come out with something sort of totally different and more important. And so one person in the crowd there asked him a question or asked him a request, and he asked him to do something for himself. Tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. And Jesus answered this question with, Who appointed me your judge or arbiter? And then he goes into something he thinks is much more important. And he says, Take care to guard against all greed. For though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. And then he gives a parable about a man who saves a lot of money, etc., and so forth, until he calls out and says, You fool, this day, this night, your life will be demanded of you. Tuesday evening at around 9 in the evening, I got a call from a priest from another parish and saying, Larry, there's somebody who wants to see you. He's dying in the hospital and he will only talk to you. Would you go over and talk to him? He's going to be dismissed from the hospital tomorrow to go home and die. And he wants to talk with you. And so I said, Well, who is he? And I didn't recognize the name, but I did when I got to the hospital the next morning. We decided, he's going to live, he's going to go home to die, and he wanted to talk to me. So the next morning, Wednesday morning, I went over at 9 o'clock and brought him communion, and we talked for a good half hour on death and even more on heaven. And this fellow told the doctors, I don't want any more treatment, turn everything off, take all the stuff out of my arm, and I'll go home to die. And I got there at 9, and I think his wife left that a half hour before to go home to get a bed for him, to go home and die. And we talked about many things, but, life and heaven. And him, where is he? Is he ready to go to heaven? And by golly, yeah, he was ready to go to heaven. He didn't want treatment. He says, I had a good life. And I looked at him and I said, Well, how old are you? And I thought he was much older than I was. He says, 81. 81? I'm 83. But at any rate, we sort of talked about, I'm just reading that book and I've been talking about it quite a bit, Imagine Heaven by John Burke. And we talked about what it's going to be like to die and what do we think, or are we afraid, or, all of that stuff. And we talked, and he was ready to die. And so at the very end, I gave him communion, and I said, Lou, pray for me, will you? And he says, I will. I will. And jokingly, and he says, when I pray for you in heaven, I just might send you 2 horses to bet on at Keeneland. Wow. That reminded me, 57 years a priest. In my first year of being a priest, one Sunday afternoon, I was called out to anoint a person that just had a heart attack, and the doctors were still at the house. And I got there, they were sticking these needles in his heart, and I was trying to anoint him and so forth. And they all left, and we settled down. And he says, Father, he says, tonight, I'm going to pray for you. in heaven. Really? Some people are amazing. They are amazing in facing death because most of us are afraid of dying. You know, that cliche, I'm not afraid to die, but not today. Some people are ready. You know, when Christ is saying that in the gospel, this day your life will be demanded of you. We're all going to go through that. We're going to go through that. So I think the gist of this week's reading, at least for me, is life does not consist in possessions, but some other more important things. And that's how we live and how we love and how we forgive. And Jesus, when he answers the request, then he gives the parable, then he gives the punchline. There's many more important things in life than possessions. He's not against possessions, but he's for something more. That you're called to love. You are called to forgive. You are called to give back or give to. The message of Jesus is that give and forgive, love and pray up to the heaven above. Jesus really was a genius. And he was so insightful that he had to give stories or parables or explain. Because we're too much concentrated on me, myself, and I in this life. I'm amazed with some people, how they have lived and how they die. Well, Friday, when I left the hospital, I thought, I think, and I'm wrong often, but I think this fellow will be dead in 2 days. And Friday morning, I finished the last chapter in my book, Imagine Heaven. And at noon, I got a call, and she said, so and so died this morning. Some people are amazing with their faith and their grace. They certainly have a lot to teach me. What about you? Have a good day.